all women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus 8. Maximizing Men. Practical insights on success, life, and relationships. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. Maximizing Men. A field guide for men who still notice reality. The Toothpaste Tyranny. Exposing the hysterical female psychosis that blames a phantom patriarchy for TSA regulations, bad digestion, and the unforgiving geometry of hard furniture. I once watched a grown woman have a near psychotic break in the TSA line at O'Hare because her artisanal yogurt exceeded the federally mandated 3.4-ounce liquid limit. She didn't blame the bureaucratic machinery of the security state, or the laws of fluid dynamics, or the simple logistical reality of pressurized cabins at 30,000 feet. She blamed men. Specifically, she blamed an invisible, omnipresent conspiracy of male supremacy that had apparently conspired through the medium of a tired federal agent named Gerald to make her feel small. I stood there with my compliant, regulation-sized toothpaste, watching this spectacle unfold, and a thought crystallized in my mind with the cold clarity of a winter morning. We have collectively lost our minds, and the patients are now writing peer-reviewed papers about the asylum. That yogurt incident came rushing back when I encountered an essay declaring that travel-sized toiletries are instruments of patriarchal oppression, what the writer christens, with the breathless pretension of a sophomore who just discovered continental philosophy, spatial dialectical compression. The thesis, stripped of its polysyllabic camouflage, amounts to this: the physical constraints of objective reality are actually a male conspiracy to make women shrink. The TSA liquid rule is not a universally applied regulation born of legitimate security concerns after men flew planes into buildings. No, it is a psychological weapon engineered to compress female vitality into tiny, suffocating tubes. This is not sociological analysis. This is the paranoid delusion of a solipsistic mind that interprets the neutral friction of existence as a personal, political attack by invisible patriarchs hiding behind every counter at every hotel front desk in the Western world. Meanwhile, the actual compression in this civilization goes entirely unremarked. Real compression is the man crawling into the suffocating blackness of a West Virginia coal seam, his lungs slowly filling with silica dust so that the lights stay on and the organic probiotics stay refrigerated. Real compression is the submariner sealed in a steel tube beneath the Arctic ice, breathing recycled air for months on end, so that the shipping lanes remain open and the supply chains that deliver artisanal yogurt to Whole Foods stay intact. Real compression is the father sitting in a family courtroom, watching his children, his home, and 2 decades of accumulated wealth transferred to the woman who perjured herself with unverified, tearful allegations, because the gynocentric legal apparatus presumes his guilt and her innocence as a matter of institutional reflex. 80% of custodial parents are mothers. Men account for 78% of suicide victims. 93% of workplace fatalities are male. Men are the only demographic that pays more in lifetime taxes than it receives in government benefits. These are not theories, these are numbers. They do not care about your feelings, your lived experience, or your doctoral dissertation on the semiotics of seat cushions. And the intellectual infants of the left cannot compute them, because they demolish the entire victim hierarchy upon which their ideology depends. What we are witnessing is not liberation, it is the tantrum of an infantile consciousness demanding that reality itself be redesigned to accommodate its fragility. The essay complains about rigid chairs rather than building better ones. It swallows pills rather than confronting uncomfortable truths. It pathologizes the natural consequences of rebellion against natural law as structural violence, because the alternative, taking responsibility for one's own life, choices, and biological realities, is too horrifying to contemplate. I intend to dismantle this entire edifice of feminist victimology piece by piece, from its fraudulent redefinition of words to its syllogistic self-refutation, until nothing remains but the smoking ruins of bad philosophy and worse theology. The truth does not require your belief. It simply is, and it is long past time we stopped apologizing for it.
Buncombe article by a feminist PhD. Have you ever found yourself staring blankly at the brutally utilitarian objects arranged neatly in your overnight bag, wondering why a quiet, suffocating dread is crawling up your throat? You are not alone. As a society, we are witnessing the collective breaking point of the marginalized under the weight of a system designed to erase them. For generations, the cis-heteropatriarchy has relied on a systemic campaign of psychological manipulation, denying its abuse, attacking our autonomy, and reversing victim and offender to maintain its fragile hegemony. When you finally awaken to this chronic, systemic Darvo, the sudden arrival of intellectual and emotional clarity doesn't feel like liberation. It feels incredibly dangerous. And it should, because that clarity threatens the very foundation of male supremacy. Consider the seemingly mundane objects of modern capitalist survival. Take, for instance, the travel toothpaste. We accept its diminished size without question. We compress our needs, our physical presence, and our spatial requirements into neat, federally approved, 3-ounce containers just to pass through the surveillance state of modern transit. This is a textbook manifestation of what I term spatial dialectical compression, SDC. SDC is the patriarchal capitalist mandate that women and marginalized genders must continually shrink themselves to accommodate the boundless, unchecked expansion of male comfort and structural power. We are taught that our natural, expansive state is excessive or hysterical, so we compress. We squeeze the very essence of our vitality into a tiny, suffocating tube. But the violence of compression does not stop at the physical. It invades our biology. Look at the exploding market for probiotic capsules. Women are consuming billions of microscopic bacteria, desperately trying to heal a gut imbalance that is actually a spiritual and political sickness. The patriarchy manufactures a fundamental scarcity of safety, rest, and resources, forcing women into brutal, endless competition with one another for the crumbs of capitalist wellness. Instead of questioning why we are chronically ill from navigating a society built entirely around male impunity, we are sold a commodified cure. We are instructed to swallow a pill to fix our individual anxiety, rather than dismantling the structural violence that caused it. The medical-industrial complex, deeply intertwined with male legal frameworks, pathologizes our completely rational distress as a personal defect. This instrumentalization of law and science for cultural ends is the invisible architecture of our oppression. The law does not exist to protect us, it exists to manage us. It codifies the right of the powerful to dominate the narrative while legally defining our resistance as disorderly. This brings us to the ultimate symbol of patriarchal accommodation, the seat cushion. We bring them into our offices, our cars, our public transit. Why? Because every public space has been ergonomically and culturally designed by and for the default male body. The entire world is a rigid, unyielding chair, and rather than tearing the chair apart and building something radically inclusive, we are told to bring our own little pads of softness to endure the pain. We are expected to silently cushion our own oppression. The anxiety you feel when you realize this, the trembling panic when the fog of Davao lifts, is the terror of a trapped animal, realizing the walls of the maze are electrified. The patriarchy wants you to believe your clarity is a panic attack. It wants you medicated, small, and distracted by the artificial scarcity of the corporate ladder. We must reject the comfort of the cushion and the illusion of the pill. We must stop squeezing our existence into travel-sized containers to make the journey easier for our oppressors. Decolonize the space, demolish the surface. Only by refusing to participate in our own spatial dialectical compression can we shatter the malevolent architecture of male comfort and reclaim our right to exist, fully expanded and unapologetically clear. The geometry of female solipsism, unpacking the delusion of spatial dialectical compression. Consider the submarine, not the metaphorical submarine of academic theory, but the real one, 600 feet of pressurized steel plunging into the freezing abyss of the Atlantic. Inside, 90 men compress themselves into a tube narrower than a city bus, sharing oxygen with diesel fumes and sweat, sleeping in racks stacked 3 high like sardines in a tin, no windows, no escape. No 3-ounce toothpaste complaint filed with the HR department of the deep. These men, and they were and are, almost entirely men, voluntarily squeezed their existence into the most claustrophobic environment ever engineered by human hands. Not because some invisible patriarchy commanded them to shrink, but because civilization requires someone to descend into the dark so that others may walk in the light. The poet Homer understood this 3,000 years ago when he sang of men who go down to the sea in ships, who perform labor that the stay-at-home class cannot fathom. And today? Today, a woman stares at her travel-sized toothpaste in an air-conditioned airport terminal and publishes an essay about how this is systemic psychological manipulation. The distance between these two forms of compression measures exactly the distance between a civilization that builds and a culture that whines. The article before us introduces a term it calls spatial dialectical compression, which it defines as the patriarchal mandate that women must shrink themselves to accommodate male comfort. Let us fix definitions before we proceed. As grammar demands, compression derives from the Latin comprimere, meaning to press together. It is a physical reality, not a political one. The earth compresses coal into diamonds. The ocean compresses the hull of a submarine. TSA compresses your liquids into 3-ounce containers because a bureaucrat in Washington decided that 3.4 ounces of shampoo is safe, but 3.5 ounces is terrorism. This rule applies to everyone: men, women, children, business travelers, vacationers, the lot. To interpret a universally applied transportation regulation as a targeted psychological assault on women is not sociology. It is solipsism. Let us define that word precisely, since the article will not. Solipsism, from the Latin solus, alone, and ipse, self, is the epistemological position that only one's own mind is certain to exist. The woman who looks at a travel-sized toothpaste and sees the architecture of her oppression is not engaged in political analysis. She is demonstrating that she cannot distinguish between objective reality and her own neurotic feelings about it. And feelings, as any philosopher worthy of the name has established from Aristotle onward, are not evidence. The article deploys the acronym DARVO, deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender, and applies it to the cis heteropatriarchy as though this constitutes an argument. Let us perform a distingo. DARVO is a real behavioral pattern observed in individuals who have caused harm and wish to evade accountability. It is a valid concept when applied to a specific person who has done a specific wrong. But the article does not apply it to a person. It applies it to an abstraction, male supremacy, which is a nebulous, unfalsifiable, all-encompassing entity that cannot be cross-examined, confronted, or proven innocent. This is a material fallacy of equivocation, taking a term defined in the context of individual psychology and stretching it to cover an entire civilization. It is like diagnosing a country with bipolar disorder. The category error is so obvious that only a university education could obscure it. But let us steelman the opposition, as dialectic demands. Let us grant, for the sake of argument, that systems can perpetrate something resembling Darvo. Where would we find the most egregious modern example? We would find it in the family court system of every Western nation. Consider the syllogism. Major premise: Darvo occurs when a guilty party denies wrongdoing, attacks the victim, and reverses the roles of victim and offender. Minor premise: in family courts across the Western world, mothers who make unverified allegations of abuse against fathers are granted immediate restraining orders, full custody, and the family home, while fathers are presumed guilty until proven innocent. Conclusion: the family court system, which is the arm of the state most directly governed by feminist policy prescriptions, is the largest institutional practitioner of Darvo in the modern world. The man who loses his children on the basis of an uncorroborated claim is the victim. The state that enforces this reversal is the offender. And the ideological framework that calls this justice is the denial. The article's author stares at a tube of toothpaste and weeps for her oppression. Meanwhile, thousands of men will go to sleep tonight in their cars because a woman they once trusted swore out a false affidavit and a judge rubber-stamped it before lunch. The article claims that the natural, expansive state of women is labeled excessive or hysterical by the patriarchy. Here we must attend to etymology. Hysterical derives from the Greek hystera, meaning womb. The ancient Greeks observed that women were prone to extreme emotional episodes that seemed disconnected from rational assessment of circumstances. They attributed this to the womb wandering through the body. They were wrong about the mechanism, but the observation itself, that there exists a pattern of emotional dysregulation disproportionately present in women, has been confirmed by modern psychology. Borderline personality disorder, which is characterized by exactly the kind of dramatic, unstable emotional reactions described in this article. The trembling panic, the suffocating dread, the feeling of being a trapped animal, is diagnosed in women at roughly 3 times the rate of men. This is not patriarchy, this is pattern recognition. And a civilization that refuses to recognize patterns because doing so offends the prevailing ideology is a civilization in the process of losing its mind. Now consider the article's central complaint about physical space. It asserts that every public environment has been ergonomically and culturally designed by and for the default male body, citing the seat cushion as evidence. Let us test this claim empirically. The average office thermostat is set to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, a temperature that study after study has shown is comfortable for men, but too cold for women, who have a higher metabolic rate at rest. When this research was published, the response from feminist ideology was not to wear a sweater. It was to declare the thermostat an instrument of patriarchal oppression, but observe the asymmetry. When the environment does not suit men, men change the environment. They invent central heating. They engineer air conditioning. They build buildings that shield occupants from the elements. When the environment does not suit women, women write essays about how the environment is a conspiracy against them. This is not a spatial problem. It is a temperamental one. The man looks at an uncomfortable chair and builds a better chair. The woman looks at an uncomfortable chair and demands that the entire concept of chairs be dismantled and replaced with something radically inclusive, by which she means a chair that makes her feel validated rather than one that actually supports her weight. The article frames the consumption of probiotics as a political act, claiming that women are swallowing pills to fix an individual anxiety that is actually caused by structural violence. Here, the ideology becomes explicitly anti-medical and anti-scientific. The gut microbiome is a real, empirically studied biological system. Probiotic supplements contain measurable quantities of beneficial bacteria that demonstrably aid digestion and immune function. To reinterpret a woman's decision to take a probiotic as a capitulation to patriarchal mind control is to strip her of agency entirely. Notice the ideological trap. If a woman takes a pill to feel better, she is a victim of the medical-industrial complex. If she questions the ideological framework, she is a gender traitor. If she feels anxious, her anxiety is political evidence. If she feels fine, she has internalized her oppression. Every possible state of the woman is interpreted as proof of the theory. This is not science. This is non-falsifiability, the hallmark of cultic thinking, the precise epistemological disease that Karl Popper identified as the boundary between knowledge and pseudoscience. The article's framework cannot be disproven because it has preemptively declared all counter-evidence to be a symptom of the very thing it claims to be fighting. The roar of a closed system, the hiss of a mind sealed shut. Let us construct the central syllogism of our argument. Major premise: if a society's institutions systematically privilege one group at the expense of another, that group is the ruling class. Minor premise: modern Western institutions, divorce courts, university tribunals, human resources departments, public schools, welfare systems, criminal sentencing guidelines systematically favor women at the expense of men. As demonstrated by custody statistics, sentencing discounts, graduation rates, workplace death disparities, suicide rates, and the complete absence of any government office dedicated to men's issues in any Western nation. Conclusion: women are the privileged class of the modern West. The math is inescapable. Women receive 63% shorter sentences for the same crimes. Women initiate 70% of divorces. Women are awarded custody in over 80% of contested cases. Women control over 80% of consumer spending. Women outnumber men in university enrollment by a ratio approaching 60-40. And yet, the article before us would have you believe that the travel toothpaste is the smoking gun of female subjugation. The ideological possession on display here is total. The article does not argue, it incants. It repeats the liturgy of victimhood with the robotic fervor of a true believer who has never once been confronted with a counter-argument, because every institution in her life has been designed to shield her from one. I want to return to that word the article uses so casually: dismantle. Dismantling the structural violence, tearing the chair apart, and building something radically inclusive. Dismantle is a word that sounds clean and surgical, but the reality it describes is destruction without replacement. What has feminism built? Not a single hospital, not a single bridge, not a single power grid or sanitation system or orbital launch vehicle. These things were built by men, overwhelmingly painfully, over centuries of compressed labor, in compressed spaces under compressed timelines. Feminism's contribution has been to stand atop this inherited mountain of masculine achievement and complain that the view is oppressive. The article's author types her manifesto on a device invented by men, powered by electricity generated by men, transmitted over networks engineered by men, published on platforms coded by men, protected by military forces staffed by men, in a building constructed by men, in a civilization defended by men. And her grand insight, her contribution to the sum of human knowledge, is that her toothpaste is too small. The article closes with a call to decolonize the space, demolish the surface, which is not a political program but a tantrum translated into academic jargon. It reveals the core pathology, the belief that all constraint is oppression and that liberation means the abolition of all limits. But constraint is not oppression. Constraint is the precondition of civilization. The law constrains the criminal. The Constitution constrains the state. The meter constrains the poem. The canvas constrains the painter. Without limits, there is no form. Without form, there is no meaning. Without meaning, there is only the formless, hysterical shriek of the solipsistic self demanding that reality itself be rewritten to accommodate its refusal to grow up. The article is not a diagnosis of society. It is a confession. It is the confession of a mind that cannot distinguish between a tube of toothpaste and a system of oppression, between a thermostat and a tyrant, between the minor inconveniences of physical existence and the genuine suffering of the men who built the world that makes her whining possible. This probiotic prevarication is no isolated lunacy. It is the holy sacrament of a secular religion erected upon the foundation of resentment. When every flutter of the gut, every tremor of anxiety, every collision with the hard edges of an indifferent objective reality is transmuted into proof of phantom oppression. We have abandoned the province of reason entirely and entered the desperate liturgy of minds at war with existence itself. The goal is not diagnosis, and it is decidedly not healing. The goal is the total demolition of the civilization that built the chair they refuse to sit in. The biology of blame, pathologizing reality to mask female fragility. A woman walks into a doctor's office, complains of bloating, and is handed a prescription for a probiotic. A feminist reads the label on this pill and diagnoses the downfall of Western civilization. We are told by the high priestesses of modern grievance that the female gut is not a biological organ subject to the indifferent laws of digestion, but a spiritual and political battleground damaged by male legal frameworks. Let us apply the blade of definition to this grotesque abscess of a theory. Pathologize, to treat a normal or biological reality as if it were a disease. Prevarication, a deviation from the truth. The articles claim that a woman's digestive distress is caused by an invisible, omnipresent patriarchal conspiracy is a textbook material fallacy of false cause. Gut imbalance is a biological reality driven entirely by diet, cortisol, and poor choices, not the phantom oppression of the cis-hetero matrix. To shift the burden of personal health and dietary responsibility onto a phantom oppressor is the ultimate abdication of adult agency. It is a toddler burning her hand on a stove and blaming the abstract concept of patriarchal thermodynamics for the pain. This astronomical arrogance, the belief that the universe itself is obligated to cushion your every physical and emotional discomfort, is the beating heart of what they dare to call oppression. Consider the supreme absurdity of the travel toothpaste theory, which the writer hilariously terms spatial dialectical compression. The TSA mandates a 3-ounce limit on liquids and gels, a uniform security protocol applied equally to every human being carrying a bag onto a plane. Yet the feminist mind interprets this neutral law of modern transit as a targeted, systemic campaign to shrink the female essence. This is not dialectic, it is clinical solipsism. It is the frantic clawing of an infantile mind that cannot distinguish between the indifferent mechanics of the physical world and a personal, emotional attack. They have transformed a mundane regulatory standard into a secular religion of resentment, minting their own mild inconveniences into moral currency. By painting themselves as victims of structural violence over a tube of Colgate, these ideologues attempt to secure a position of unassailable moral purity, entirely exempt from the rigorous demands of logic, empirical evidence, and personal responsibility. Behold the most damning metaphor of their entire ideology, the rigid chair. The writer complains that public spaces are ergonomically designed for the default male body, arguing that the entire world is an unyielding chair, forcing women to bring their own little pads of softness to endure the pain. Here is a fundamental truth they refuse to utter. The world is a rigid, unyielding chair. That chair represents natural law. It represents objective reality, logos, and the cold, hard necessity of survival. It does not care about your feelings, your trauma, or your sprawling, unearned sense of entitlement. Historically, when a man found the world uncomfortable, when the chair was too hard or the cave too cold, he did not weep into his therapist's lap. He chopped down a tree, planned the wood, and built a better chair. He conquered the elements, toughened his mind and body, and forged civilization out of the raw, hostile material of the earth. The modern feminist demands that the state provide her with a subsidized cushion while simultaneously blaming men for the fact that the universe is not lined with velvet. To demand that we tear the chair apart because it does not conform to your specific anatomical or emotional comfort is a literal declaration of war against reality itself. Do not be fooled by their tears. Their ultimate goal is not equality, and it is undeniably not health. It is the complete dismantling of objective standards, rational discourse, and the masculine foundations of society. They seek to shatter the malevolent architecture, But they offer no schematics for a new building. They are an army of termites mistaking the rot of the floorboards for the foundation of the house. This is the destructive endgame of soft totalitarianism, a chaotic, decaying ruin governed entirely by the ever-fluctuating, hysterical feelings of broken minds. They claim the medical-industrial complex pathologizes their distress as a personal defect, but the exact opposite is true. The modern therapeutic state, the human resources department, the academic grievance bureaucracy, these institutions exist almost entirely to cater to female neuroses. Modern psychology has completely surrendered to the feminine imperative, diagnosing normal male ambition and stoicism as toxicity, while heavily medicating women to help them endure the agonizing emptiness created by their own hyper-individualistic, traditionally barren lifestyles. The multi-billion-dollar capitalist wellness industry is not a patriarchal conspiracy to suppress them. It is a matriarchal grift designed to monetize their perpetual victimhood. Strip away the academic jargon, the faux sociology, and the breathless panic, and you will find the true cause of modern female anxiety. Women are not chronically ill from navigating a male supremacist society. They are sick because they have rebelled against their own nature. They have denied the transcendent good, abandoned the profound beauty of the complementary sexes, and tried to force their psyches to run on the toxic, sludgy fuel of perpetual resentment and careerist hyper-competition. The anxiety they feel, the trembling panic they describe, is not the sudden arrival of intellectual clarity. It is the agonizing friction of living a lie. It is the cognitive dissonance of a mind violently at war with its own biological reality. The walls of the maze are not electrified by the patriarchy. They are built of the feminists' own projections and hallucinations. We must stop apologizing for the hard surfaces of reality. We must refuse to hand over the hammer and the nails just because a fragile, ungrateful generation refuses to do the hard work of building. Let them sit on the floor. We have a civilization to reconstruct. You have just waded through the absolute apex of female solipsism, a grotesque spectacle where a 3-ounce tube of toothpaste and a travel pillow are recast as the instruments of a phantom patriarchy. Let us anchor ourselves back in the uncompromising territory of objective reality with a simple, devastating syllogism. Major premise: a system that demands the systemic sacrifice of one demographic to subsidize the emotional and material comfort of another is structurally biased against the sacrificing class. Minor premise: our modern legal, corporate, and cultural institutions systematically dismantle male due process, extract male wealth through predatory family courts, and discard male livelihoods to subsidize female feelings and safety. Conclusion: modern society is not a cishetero patriarchy. It is a gynocentric matriarchy propped up by the unacknowledged sweat and blood of men. QED. The logic is inescapable. While our feminist theorist weeps over the spatial dialectical compression of packing a carry-on, millions of men are literally compressed into the suffocating dirt of coal mines, the deafening roar of combat trenches, and the ruinous machinery of heavy industry, occupations that account for over 90% of workplace fatalities, to keep the very lights on in her gender studies classroom. You want to speak of a rigid, unyielding chair that causes spiritual distress. That unyielding chair is natural law. It is the hard, magnificent reality of a universe governed by logos, which does not care about your lived experience, your unverified trauma, or your irritable bowel syndrome. When a man finds the world uncomfortable, when he faces the brutal elements of a stoic and indifferent reality, he does not throw a philosophical tantrum and demand the state provide a softer cushion. He builds a better chair. He conquers the elements. He toughens his mind and body. The modern feminist, entirely severed from the transcendent good, looks at the objective difficulties of human existence and diagnoses them as a misogynistic conspiracy. She swallows a probiotic to cure a spiritual sickness, oblivious to the fact that her anxiety is the agonizing friction of a soul force-fed, the lie that she can act as a man, breed like a rabbit, and drink like a sailor without paying the biological toll. She is not oppressed by male legal frameworks. She is oppressed by the crushing weight of her own unaccountability and the biological clock that ticks louder than her oppressed grievances. You are no longer bound by their pathetic, self-sealing word games. You have seen the mechanics of their matrix, exposed the fraud of their standpoint epistemology, and witnessed the sheer cowardice of a movement that cries victimization while holding the levers of corporate HR, academia, and family law. The anxiety they feel is the terror of the irresponsible facing the consequences of a reality they cannot manipulate with a hashtag. Step out of the shrink wrap. Refuse the feminized comfort of the therapeutic state. You are a man, an inheritor of the greatest civilizational engine the cosmos has ever witnessed, built on the pillars of logic, merit, and stoic endurance. You bow to no one's manufactured hysteria. Go forth, speak the truth with the unapologetic force of a sledgehammer, and watch the fragile linguistic illusions of the left shatter against the bedrock of your resurrected resolve. You are awake. Now, make them face the reality they so desperately fear. And now the sponsored book introduction, Maximizing Men, Practical Insights on Success, Life, and Relationships. Men aren't born weak. They're trained to be weak. I learned this the hard way. Growing up, I watched my father work 60-hour weeks only to get handed divorce papers, half his pension, and a studio apartment. I saw friends trade their ambition for validation from women who'd replace them the second someone taller or richer swiped right. I spent years stuck in the beta trap, chasing promotions, therapy sessions, and kale salads, while the men who actually understood power built empires, ignored critics, and died with their boots on. This book exists because I crawled out of that hell, studied what works, and weaponized it. If you're tired of being told masculinity is toxic by people who've never lifted anything heavier than a hashtag, this is your reload. Maximizing Men isn't about feelings, fairness, or feminist-approved pep talks. It's a field manual for dominance in a world that wants you soft, broke, and begging. You'll learn how 1% daily gains turn clerks into conquerors. Topic 1. Why Elon Musk schedules his day in 5-minute blocks while you're stuck scrolling TikTok. Topic 2. And how to dodge the marriage plantation where 80% of divorces end with men financially gelded. Topic 5. We'll dissect Navy SEAL pain protocols. Topic 7. Build Spartan sleep habits. Topic 3. And turn legacy into a verb. Topic 12. This book is for men who'd rather bleed on the battlefield than rust in a cubicle. For those who see gender equality as a math problem. Women birth children, men build civilizations. If you're offended by that truth, close this book now. Go binge Netflix, buy a soy latte, vote for whoever promises to tax the strong to subsidize the weak. You'll hate what's coming next. For the rest, the 10% with guts enough to lead, these pages will teach you to weaponize time, enforce boundaries feminists call toxic. Topic 10, and crush mediocrity with systems, not luck. You'll master red-pilled economics. Topic 14, biohack your biology. Topic 16, and leave a name that outlives your coffin. Topic 24. No apologies, no compromises, just results. Weak men negotiate. Strong men act. The choice is yours.
Maximizing Men, Practical Insights on Success, Life, and Relationships. Written by Conrad Reicher. Buy now, links in description.